All right, thank you. All right, good afternoon and welcome everybody to the third RAC meeting for the Association Health Plans rulemaking. I'm Lisa Emerson. I'm the health policy analyst with the division in the policy section, and I've stepped in to help with the rulemaking process for association health plans. And I've never read so much about association health plans, so I've just learned a lot, and I continue to learn a lot from all of you. So we look like we have a good group here today. I think I'll just take a moment and go down the list of RAC members and also DFR staff, and just give you an opportunity to briefly introduce yourself. So we'll kind of try to go quickly through this in the essence of time. And I'll start with, let's see, where'd it go? Not really in any order here. Let's start with Antoinette with Cambia.
Yes,
Hi.
Good afternoon. My name is Antoinette Iwachi, and I'm the Senior Regulatory Affairs Specialist for Cambia Health.
Thanks for being here. And how about Melanie Anderson?
Hi there, I'm from United.
And Jennifer Baker?
Hi, Jennifer Baker, Director of Government Affairs for Providence Health Plan.
Welcome. Dave Nestor-Cass?
Hi, Dave Nestor-Cass, Director of Regulatory Affairs for Moda Health and Delta Dental of Oregon.
Thank you. And Dell Johnson? Okay, I see Dell there, but we'll come back. Gary Holiday?
Good morning, or good afternoon, Lisa. Gary Holiday, Compliance Manager for Commercial Business at Pacific Source Health Plans.
Thanks for being here. Stuart Harris?
Hi, Stuart Harris. I'm with an attorney with the law firm Davis Wright Tremaine in Portland.
Thanks for being here. And Iris Tilley?
I'm an attorney with the law firm Barron Liebman here in Portland as well.
Thank you. See, Katie Brooks?
Good afternoon, I'm Katie Brooks. I'm with the Bend Chamber of Commerce and the Bend Chamber Health Plan.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Let's see, Mary Beth Garino?
Hi, Mary Beth Garino. I'm with Osberg.
Being here. I think as far as official RAC members, I think I've almost caught everybody, but if I missed somebody, how about Roger Rupp?
Roger Rupp, RGA Resources, Association Health Plan Manager.
Thank you. And is there anyone else from the RAC that I missed? I lost my list. I'm not looking at it at the moment. Okay. And also, welcome interested parties that I know that other staff members with the different insurers are also joining us today, and other interested parties. So welcome to all of you. How about DFR staff? We'll start with Tasha Sizemore.
Hi, everyone. Tasha Sizemore, Life and Health Program Manager for the division.
Thank you, Tasha. And then Rick Berry.
Hello, Rick Berry, Health Policy Analyst, DFR.
Great. Anyone else? Well, there's Karen Winkle. You want to say hi, Karen?
Hello, this is Karen Winkle. I'm the rules coordinator for the division.
Okay, and Cassie Susie?
Good afternoon, everyone. Cassie Susie. I am one of the senior policy advisors at DFR.
And Trisha Goldsmith?
Hi, everyone. I'm Trisha Goldsmith, and I'm the manager of our consumer advocacy and outreach unit here at the division.
Any other DFR staff that I missed? All right. Thank you for being here today. So what I'd like to do is start with a brief overview of the comments that were submitted by the April 1st timeline after our last RAC meeting, and just give each comment submitter an opportunity to hit the highlights of those comments. Now, the comments were shared with all the RAC members, and they are posted on the DFR rulemaking website. If you don't happen to have the documents in front of you, I'll just put a link in the chat. But why don't we start by reviewing, if you've got those available, Karen, maybe start with Cambia, with Antoinette with Cambia.
Okay.
Yes. Lisa, did you want me to start?
Yeah, you can
Okay.
go ahead and start if
Okay.
you've got them. We'll get it up here shortly, but why don't you go ahead and start?
Great. So our comments was based on the February 23rd version of the draft rules. And some of it was requesting for clarification along the lines of reference to the form prescribed by the director. We see that a lot of some of our recommendations were accepted in the current revised version. But most importantly, in reference to subsection 3G, where it required, it stated that if the employer association will offer coverage to small employer members, evidence demonstrating that the group health plan coverage available to employees of small employers will provide coverage that is substantially equal to the essential health benefits adopted under the Oregon statute at a minimum actuarial value of at least 60%. We felt that as written, this draft rule proposed was inconsistent with the federal rules for AHPs, and it created a disincentive for small employers to join an association health plan. Because under the federal rules, an AHP is considered a single large employer and is therefore not required to offer essential health benefits to small employer members. So we requested that that subsection be stricken from the rules and revert to federal guidance. In addition, we also had a comment on the transition period in which an AHP had to achieve compliance. Again, we recommended no more than 18 months to put each association on the same level playing field. We see that the current revised rules has made a slight change to that to 22 years. And then lastly, we also did respectfully request that the DFR require AHPs to also submit an attestation to hold them accountable for the information that's submitted to the DFR. So that's in summary the highlights of our comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for summarizing. How about we move on to Iris Tilley with Baron Lieben. Do you have that one, Karen?
Not readily.
Okay.
Oh, I'll poke around. Hang on. Or yeah, go ahead.
I can talk. I can talk through them. It's
okay.
No problem at all. We don't need to have the document up.
Okay. Okay.
Not an issue. So we had suggested a few inline edits to the document, nothing super substantial, but the goal was really to add a little bit of clarity within the document, and then also just to address a few internal inconsistencies regarding commonality of interest. And I noticed that some of the edits regarding the possibility of having multiple health plans were adopted, and then a statutory item that we added a little clarity to was adopted. And then we had added some specific changes around the commonality definitions to get at the concept that an association may itself cover more than one industry, whereas each individual plan would not. And I noticed that in the most recent draft of the rules, language was added to rely directly on an attorney attestation letter, which I think really gets at the underlying messaging that we were trying to get to, just sort of truing things up with the federal requirements. And so it looks like that in those most recent edits, that was just adopted in a little bit different of a way. And so I think that really summarizes where we were going with the edits.
All right, thank you very much. Oh, sorry. How about we move on to Providence? And if someone's got the ambulance going, you maybe want to mute. Thank you.
Hi. I haven't reviewed my comments in a minute, so hold on. But
That's okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted the DFR to clarify: are you going to be like define the required criteria and format necessary for filing in the like transmittal or in the product standards template? We would like to see you release that as soon as we can, so we can start figuring out what we're going to need for the filings. I think for the DFR documentation required for bona fide status, we appreciate the greater detail in section 3EA. The draft language itemizes a list of criteria, and I haven't, it looks like, yeah, like I think, the changes that were made, but I don't think there was too much difference. We just want the DFR to review those criteria more narrowly in the product standards or the transmittal document. So again, we're responding to the same request. And I think it's triggering me now. We're all like, it's a level playing field for all filers, and we're all responding to the same questions. I think that sometimes some information is requested from some, but not from others. And we just want to make sure, it's very clear. And then finally, the attestation is something that we would really support, having, the association attest to the membership being compliant with the association health plan rules, as the health plan doesn't have control over that. So that pretty much kind of sums up where we're at.
Thank you, Jen. And I have, when we go through the rules, thank you for the advance noticing the changes, but we'll walk through those changes and to give you the background and try to answer any of the questions that were outstanding from the last meeting that we had.
Okay, thanks.
Let's go to Mary Beth, if you'd like to just briefly make any comments. No pressure one way or the other, but.
Yeah, just really quickly from OSPRG, we think that these rules are generally reflective of consumer interests. More bargaining power gives better or will allow small businesses and other and their employees to get better coverage. And I think that that's really the most important piece of it for us. I think some of the other issues that are up in the air aren't necessarily consumer issues. I think that their timing and aligning with federal guidance, I think is fine. So I think that from a consumer perspective, as long as these employees aren't being left behind, I think we're on the right track here.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Appreciate you taking the time to review all the material and give that your feedback. So Karen, if you could go ahead and put up the draft rule screen. And I think we'll just start going through each of the changes and also try to clarify any of the outstanding questions that we had around some of these. A little, oh, there it goes. That's a better size. Okay. So just methodically, we'll kind of walk through this. Some of these are pretty straightforward, but there was a decision to just do a word change instead of using plan in the title, using the word coverage to go with group health benefit coverage. all, as far as the term being used in the title. I don't know if anybody has any concerns, comments about that change. And then as Iris Tilly mentioned, we did add in the suggestion that we received about one or more, which sponsor one or more fully insured group health benefit plan for its members. I don't know. I'd have to follow up on why we don't just use coverage, but I think it's specific in this particular sentence to say plan. Any concerns or comments about that? 2A was all, we already addressed that from the previous RAC, and there were no issues with that change. The new 2A, we've added the suggestion that Iris provided to provide greater clarity by referencing the law more specifically with the sub piece to it. And if you want to scroll down, Karen. So I think there was a question that I received, I remember in the verbal comments in our meeting about in a form prescribed by the director on 3. So a carrier proposing to offer group health benefit coverage to an employer association must submit in the form prescribed by the director the following information to the department's Division of Financial Regulation for approval. And the form that will be prescribed is what many of you have reminded or you're aware of, that is a transmittal document. There is a transmittal that for association health plans and MUAs that exists already, but it's broader transmittal. That will probably need to be updated because a new transmittal has been in development specific to association health plans, and it will be I don't know if you call it being more narrow. It's going to be slightly repetitive to what's already in ERISA law, which has been repeated in these rules about, it'll be a Q&A, so yes and no questions. So we will be consistently asking questions for each filing. So that may help address some concerns. And in speaking internally with our team, that document may have been previewed when this whole process started back in, I believe, 2021, when there were some informal work group discussions with stakeholders. I wasn't a part of those, but if those of you don't recall the form, it's not quite ready for us to share for feedback. We think that it will be, if these rules can become final draft rules that we all are fine with, we would then get that document cleaned up and sent out maybe within a few weeks of our landing on final draft rules, because we would want you to see that and give some feedback. But it's a fairly lengthy document with asking issuers the same and associations the same questions. So I see a hand is up.
Yeah, hey Lisa, this is Antoinette from Cambia Health. I didn't know whether we could ask questions as you review the current draft. Can we do that, or should we wait till the end?
Oh, I think that's fine. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that I understand what the form prescribed by the director is. So are you saying that the current transmittal is going to be updated or restructured to follow the requirements in these draft rules? Or are you just going to scratch the current transmittal and create a new transmittal specific to these draft rules?
It's a very good question, and I'm going to defer to Rick Berry on this because we were chatting about it by email this morning.
Yeah, the answer is actually yes to both. We're going to both revise the existing transmittal, which right now is a transmittal for kind of all seasons. It services all health products filed through an association, trust, and even some discretionary groups. So what we're going to do instead is pull the portions of that transmittal that apply to association health plans out and using the pieces that are there already and these rules, once finalized, will craft a second transmittal that will be exclusive for use with association health plans. And the intention is, as Lisa kind of alluded to, is to distribute that to this group for review prior to publishing, but it'll be available hopefully within a couple weeks of the final draft of these rules being agreed upon.
Okay, so then the existing transmittal will only pertain to discretionary groups, and then a new transmittal essentially will be for AHPs.
Well, no, it'll apply to health products that are not health benefit plans that are issued to associations evaluated only under Oregon law.
Okay.
So miscellaneous health and you know, like pretty much that, pretty much miscellaneous health.
Okay, great, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you for the question and thanks for the response, Rick. So let's see. And if you would go down to let's see, right, 3, I think just under 3, I think it's 3A. We did make a change here. I'm not sure if we made it before or after, but there was some, is everyone okay with that? Let's go. Can you scroll back up a little bit, Karen? To 3A. So the Constitution, current Constitution and bylaws would need to be received with the filing. Any questions about that? We removed some other language. I don't have it in front of me right now. That was vague and we just removed that. So it's specific to just Constitution and bylaws. And then going down to capital A, 3A, again, just for consistency, the word employer has been put in front of association because that's how it was stated above, and you'll see that throughout the rest of the document for consistency. And then of course, group health benefit health plan has been struck and it's now group health benefit coverage to be consistent with above. And then we had discussed at the last RAC this statement about working owner is not allowed to enroll. Working owner means sole proprietor and other self-employed individuals who do not employ at least one common law employee. Now, I think we were fine with that piece last go around, but if anyone has any questions, comments.
Okay. This is Stuart. I think at the last go around, a question that came up and I made a note of is kind of the measurement period. And this came up when someone had asked me, you know, if someone say has typically had a couple of employees, excuse me, and say, you know, but that it's small. You have 2 employees and then maybe they both leave. So for a period of time, this business is simply comprised of the sole proprietor. Does that bounce them out? Is there kind of a grace period before they hire someone new?
I'm remembering that question now, and I forgot to make a note to revisit that. So we tried to address that. I thought I recalled it maybe had to do with upon renewal, but I would ask if Tasha or Rick, if you recall that conversation, and do we need more time to sort that out, or is it kind of on a case-by-case basis when the issue comes up? Maybe some outreach to the division about it, just to be aware.
This is Rick Berry again. I guess we could be more specific that the evaluation is made at the time of renewal, but my understanding is that's existing practice.
Okay.
Industry wide. So I may, you know, if any of the carriers can correct me on that, so be it. I don't believe that's something we police, but if they're eligible at the time of renewal, I don't believe the analysis goes deeper than that.
And I don't think we're planning to put anything in the rule. It would be more getting more clarity perhaps in the transmittal or in other standards document.
I think that makes sense. Thank you. That helps.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me of that question. Okay. We just had on B, capital B here. We have just a wording change, just rearranging the way this is stated. Down on 3E, this is where, when you were reviewing some of your comments, where we made some significant change to include that an attorney letter, an ERISA analysis attorney letter should be, must be filed with the filing, must include that, all based on current ERISA law. And the criteria would be exactly as it's stated in the Section 5 of the law. And I see a hand. Let's see, is it Iris? You want to go first? You're muted.
Thank you. I think that you may have just resolved this, but just for clarity, is the intent here that commonality would mirror effectively what is required at federal law? So we'd be looking to mirror the state law requirements and the federal law requirements, or is the intent something else where there would be additional state law requirements to meet that commonality requirement under ERISA? I just wanted to understand sort of how the state and federal are intended to play together here.
I have a note I just need to refer to on that. If anyone wants to jump in on that from DFR, but I do have a note that I looked into that and I made a note. So let's see.
Yeah, this might be an item for Pramila, but my understanding is that as much as we're able, we're going to follow the federal law here. I don't believe we have any choice. Unfortunately, as I'm sure you're all aware, the feds haven't given us a lot to work with, and maybe some of what they've given is a little bit contradictory. Nevertheless, I think we have to largely defer, although Pramila may be able to offer more clarity than I'm able, but that's my understanding.
No, thanks for that. I appreciate that. I was wondering if the state was looking to impose requirements beyond what the federal requirements are, but it sounds like that's not the case. The goal is, where we understand what the federal requirements are to mirror those.
Yeah, and a note from her that I have is that DFR will evaluate on the evidence submitted using factors listed in little I through little 5 to assess that the association and covered individuals are tied by a common economic or representational interest or a commonality of interest. This commonality may be based in factors other than a common industry. So that was just some additional notes that she gave. But yeah, it's following the federal ERISA.
Thank you both very much.
Anyone else I see another hand up.
Yeah, hi Lisa, it's Dave Neslacast with Moda and Delta. So just wanted to chime in on that. So support this kind of idea of the DFR standards here in the rule following the federal standards. And just to go a step further with it, maybe just a bit beyond the rule itself, just really asking for, I guess, what I would call kind of a reasonableness standard here. As you've set this up, you have an expert opinion from an attorney being used here as kind of your basis for evaluating this determination under whether there's a plan here, a sponsorship under ERISA. So just asking for kind of a reasonableness test here. I think we've seen you can get really kind of tied up. I mean, as I think Rick mentioned, the federal guidance isn't always perfectly clear. But again, I think the sort of reasonableness test and recognizing that these are pretty fact dependent, sometimes very unique, situations that the sort of way in which an association forms and structures itself. So just wanted to kind of go a step beyond and kind of ask for that, not so much in the rule, but kind of in the application of it at the review level.
Thank you, Dave, for that comment.
Understood. And yeah, we're on the same page there. I think that our thinking has tended to kind of go back and forth on what a reasonable view of commonality and the letters themselves has been. But I think we're going to land, I think, giving more deference to the letters themselves than maybe we signaled initially. But I'm not sure I can say more than that right now.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, Antoinette, see your hands up.
Yeah, hi. Our comment, it's just in reference to the addition of U.S. Department of Labor guidance. We're requesting that it be removed because it creates ambiguity. It's not specific enough and we would not know which DOL guidance it's referring to. So we think it would be cleaner and easier to comply if all the requirements are limited to ERISA.
I can definitely take that comment back to the group that helped with the drafting. I did quite a bit of reading and I did come across, I kind of see your point. It was an older document from the Department of Labor, from the Employee Benefits Security Administration arm. It was about a 135-page document about guidance, because I was working very hard on this pre-existing relationship question and I was really coming up empty, and I think that's going to have to just be answered in the attorney letter. But it was, again, 135 pages of guidance, and it was helpful because they did go into trying to explain many of the aspects that we have put codified in their rule. But I have to take that back to our internal team to discuss. So you're just stating you'd like the U.S. Department of Labor guidance struck?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
But we can still reference ERISA. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you for that. I see. Let's see. I think Gary's hand was up first, and then I'll go to Stuart.
Gary Pacific, I support that what Annette says, because the Department of Labor guidance could be coming out at any time. I think it's good if we just stick to ERISA. So I just want to say support for that recommendation.
Thank you. Stuart?
And I'll just echo what Antoinette and Gary just said. I think that makes more sense given how the DOL guidance historically has been a bit of a hodgepodge. So it's a little less stable, it seems to me.
Thank you. So any other questions with this section here of the 3EA I through 5, or 1 through 5, Roman numeral? Do you still have a question, Stuart, or just your hands still up?
I do not have a question. I'll have to figure out how to remove that hand.
Okay.
There we go. Thanks.
There you go. All right, let's move on. Scrolling down. So right here, BF, well, actually F, 3F, we've removed this requirement, which you would have seen in the advanced copy. Those are typically filed annually, and it's really only if we needed them. It would be more if there was a reason that they were needed, but in general, the group had decided that we could remove this. Any questions or comments on that, even from the DFR staff? If you want to say anything? Okay. And then on G, 3G, we've changed the language here to be specific to that the coverage should meet federal minimum value requirements defined in 45 CFR 156.145, which is generally equivalent to an affordable care bronze level plan. Antoinette.
Yeah, it's a vast improvement to what it was before, but however, we also request that the reference to which is generally equivalent to an affordable Care Act bronze level plan be removed because minimum value does not require meeting essential health benefits or other metal level requirements. So we will encourage that be removed.
Thank you for that comment. We will discuss that. Unless.
Hey, I'm sorry.
Rick,
Yeah,
you're gonna say-
Rick Berry, DFR. Antoinette or others, do you feel that should be fleshed out a little more with, additional guidance from within that federal law? Or do you think it's fine just without the reference to the ACA?
I guess my question would be, why was it included in the first place?
Not sure I can perfectly answer that, but I think it was a nod to sort of part of what got us here was a concern that these products tend to or may tend to undermine the small group market. And so I think there was a desire to make sure that we included language that indicated that the coverage in these plans was not designed to be less protective to members and consumers than they would enjoy under an ACA plan, with full knowledge that may not be the case, but that was the desire and that was what led us here at the time. I mean, and these minimum value requirements do still have what's essentially, they use a different terminology, but it's essentially an AV calculator that specifies the coverage cannot drop below a 60 AV. Like I said, they use a little bit different term, but that my recollection was, and there's obviously been a lot of water under the bridge, but that was the intention behind including that provision in the first place.
And I think that that's still the division's intention of having that kind of test in there, is we need to have assurances that there isn't a movement of folks to plans that aren't going to meet their needs and are going to generate consumer harm and consumer complaints. So
Gary. Sorry, it was me.
Hey, I just want this here to see words. I support the removal of that because I looked at the federal law and it has reference to the 60% and other things. I would have a little concern if we're restating it here. I think it's not necessary if we just leave it at 156.45. That way the Health Planner Association go look at that federal law and do it.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I'm comfortable with that. That's what applies to large group anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I think if you have bronze and they're starting to create different bronze things, it might just be cleaner to end it at 145.
Okay, thank you. And then these are just minor changes, and 4, just putting employer in front of association. Removing that lovely reference numeral there. We removed the number 5, the working owner. We would just put it in a different place on further up in the rule. And then that changed us to having a new number 5. And we took all of your feedback and the discussion that we received to try to provide clarity for timing this process. So that's where we came up with this suggested language that beginning in 2023, no later than October 31 of each year, that is when an insurance carrier that's offering group health coverage to the employer association must inform the division of changes to the information required under Section 3 of this rule. Does that get us closer to some clarity on timing? Gary?
Yeah, it does. And this may get a little more in the weeds, and it's probably more for Rick of, is it just a simple email, or do you need another attorney letter, or to what level of information is going to suffice here? And we may do it through a transmittal form, which is fine, but I want to at least ask the question and get the DFR's thoughts of what they envision.
Yeah, not another attorney letter. maybe, Tasha could step in and save me from myself here, but I think it would be something like the market conduct reports that are filed through SURF, or we just started accepting those through SURF. And I think if anything, we're going to expand that approach. And this might be the next opportunity to just reaffirm that the coverage documents haven't changed. But yeah, I don't think we want to require carriers or associations to sort of recreate their documents or generate new legal opinions if none are necessary.
Okay.
Yeah, and that description is correct. We would basically create another reporting template with the help of insurers of what would be reported in terms of like each field. Just, really quickly, are you still writing this product? Yes, no, and then probably like the form number. Like seriously, that easy. And then have that submitted yearly. That's what we're looking at.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and Rick, again, my preference would be that be some sort of aggregate report. I don't necessarily know that we need to have that by association if a carrier has multiple associations for whom they offer plans. But I don't know that we've fleshed that piece out yet.
Okay, and that's fine if we do it through, the transmittal forms and outside the rule. Just want to get your guys' thinking. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
And I think Antoinette has a hand up.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out how this will work also in practice, because further down the rules, it indicates that we're required to file our previously approved associations by July 1st of 2023. So that means that in reading this subsection 5, that means that in October, if anything has changed since we filed our AHPs prior to July 31st, we would need to submit something again no later than October 31st of 2023. It may make sense to maybe change it to 2024 instead, because it seems like we'll be doing it over again, depending on which way the DFR goes.
Rick Berry again. I guess kind of the way I think this should work, at least, initially, is that there should be, I think, a formal filing for the groups that provide the current documents for the AHP. And then going forward, if there's no changes, then the aggregate report can be made instead. But I think we're open to input on that piece, but I think at least initially there should be essentially a complete filing made once these rules are finalized.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you on that,
Okay.
because I think that's what the rules do indicate. I don't know, I can't remember which section because it's below, but it seems the way 5 is written that beginning again in 2023 and no later than October 31st of each year, we would have to possibly redo what we just filed, prior to July 31st of 2023. So my suggestion is that maybe it be pushed back a year to begin in 2024 rather than 2023.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that piece. I just know that going forward, I think the intention is that there be a complete filing once the rules are finalized, and then each subsequent year, either an updated filing that if plan documents have changed, or an affirmation that the following 5 AHPs for which we are offering coverage, that there's been no changes. But that's as deeply as I've thought about it. I don't think we want to require an annual refiling, a complete SURF AHP group specific filing, unless there's been changes to the plan documents.
Specific to changes.
Right.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any comments or questions about that? Barry?
I was just thinking going forward, like Antoinette says, is if we push off to 24, then any new groups that file in July of 2024, they're going to have to do it. It just perpetuates the only way I can see is if you want to change the rule and says, you know, the following October 31st, you know, a year later type of approach to prevent from having to do it twice. But yeah, otherwise, anybody that does a new filing is going to have to do it before October 31st.
Yeah,
I don't know if there is an
we're
easy
we're
answer.
thinking a year out. A year out is kind of, from when these finalize. So, when these rules finalize is a little bit of a guess, but I mean, I think we're pretty sure they're, if not imminent, very soon. So within a year of that, I think was the intention. So I think we're probably pretty firm on the 2023 date, but Antoinette's comments are noted, and we'll consider it, but I don't know.
Thank you for all that feedback, and we will have to discuss it further. So let's move on to this last section of this of 7. So this was again an effort to give clarity on the timing and also to kind of strike a compromise with the differing opinions about either a 3-year transition plan versus an 18-month, or offering coverage up to 3 years versus 18 months. So we just kind of thought we'd try to meet in the middle or close to the middle, with 24 months being 2 years. And wonder what you all think about that. Barry.
Yeah, I mean, I know Pacific Source, we were one of those that encouraged the 3 years. 2 years, I can see it's being reasonable and understandable. I don't have an issue there. What I'm trying to understand, Lisa, is this refiling that's going to be required. Again, it might begin the details a little bit of, can you, maybe Rick, or you can explain a little bit, what does it mean when we refile? Is it a whole new attorney letter, package of documents? Can we refer a prior filing? I'm trying to look at the workload here and what's going to be necessary for you guys to do it. If we know there's a problem, do we submit a transitional plan? Do we wait till we communicate with you? Can you give us a little idea of what the process looks like?
Yeah, I think if the groups, Rick Gary again, I think if the plan documents that that the group wishes to rely upon have not changed, I think you can recycle those. I don't think there's an expectation that they be recreated if that's not necessary. I think the intention is that there would be a new filing, a new SUR filing that includes the bylaws, constitution, ERISA letter, any attestations necessary in the transmittal. But you wouldn't have to recreate documents that had already been created. We don't expect a new ERISA letter that's been dated, at some point in 2023, or it won't be accepted. I think the kind of the purpose of that refiling, though, is for carriers to either say, hey, or the groups to say, we comply, or we want to go forward with the sort of the annual attestation, and if you agree, or annual affirmation that we comply, and if you agree, then that's the process we're on. But that would also be the point in which a group that does need a transition plan would identify that. Either say that, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a lot of ways that they could do the run out. Either it's we're going to try to find new coverage for our employees, or we are going to generate new ERISA lands, new plan or new ERISA letters, new plan documents, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the time that a transition plan will be crafted, and the 2-year time clock would start.
When would it start, Rick? After the transition plan's approved?
Yes,
okay.
I think. Or possibly from, I think when we first, trotted that out, it was from the July 2023 date, and that would be kind of a date certain for everybody. But I think that's negotiable.
Okay. Any other feedback on this piece? Okay. Antoinette.
Just quickly, I just want to make sure I I do understand, I did want to understand what Rick just said. So for any current AHP that has been approved, we will be filing them all by July 1st, 2023 for for approval. For our AHPs that cannot achieve compliance by July 1st, 2023, we have to provide some kind of written letter, document that explains their path to achieving compliance in 2 years.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Stuart.
Tasha, did you have any feedback on that? Or, I mean,
I agree, Rick. You're fine.
Just as a follow-up on that, if there's a gray area or a gap, I mean, for maybe there's a difference of opinion where you've got an association health plan that they think they're in compliance, but DFR doesn't agree. I mean, they may not know that, you know, if they do their filing thinking that they're good by July 1, 2023, then if they get informed by DFR that we don't think this cuts it, does then the 2-year transition, or any thoughts on how that would resolve itself?
I mean, given that, I think maybe what I'm hearing here is that maybe that it makes more sense that to start the 2-year clock from when there's a disposition, meaning that the filing would be required by date certain, right now, July 1st, 2023. But then the clock wouldn't start until we finalized that filing process with a disposition saying either you're approved to act as an AHP going forward, or that there's already, that the dispute process has already been exhausted, that the parties have had hopefully some sort of meeting of the minds and agree that they won't be able to meet the requirements and wish to start the transition process, and that the 2-year would start from then. So if the disposition wasn't made until October, it would be two years from October 2023.
Thank you.
Does that answer the question? Okay.
Iris?
I was just going to note that Rick, I think that makes a lot of sense, because I imagine that there are quite a few associations that may think that things work under the current rules, and that I think creates a good time frame for ensuring that everyone has an even playing field and also is able to get into compliance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Antoinette?
Yeah, I agree with Stuart and Tilly as well. And the disposition, hopefully, if it's not approval, would explain why, so that, the association would know how to proceed, and the health plan would know how to proceed going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And Lisa, we probably should update this section to provide more clarity there. This is good feedback, I think.
Yeah, that is good feedback. I can see some potential solutions, like upon disposition, the division may allow the carrier. It would be a fairly, hopefully a simple word fix. We could fix this for clarity.
And to Antoinette's point, we should probably also, specify that we'll be responsible on some level for specifying that this is the outcome, some sort of narrative explaining next steps.
That doesn't need to go in the rule, though. It would be more a process, like part of the transmittal document. The guidance could go in there.
Yeah, I think that's just really an internal process for us, Lisa. I think you're right. That, hopefully the insurers on the call know that you can pick up the phone and harass me at any time, and that at least for the domestics, we have quarterly touch bases. So hopefully none of this would be coming out of left field, and that there would be strong communication anyway. I know that Rick communicates with the insurers and then communicates internally with us. So it is just really, making sure that it's clear in the process that, that the notification is clear to the insurer, and that the disposition is clear about the outcome.
So perhaps we don't really need to change anything here. It could just be clarified in as a procedural thing in the transmittal. Would that
I
be
do think
acceptable?
I do think we need to start the clock at disposition. to
Yes.
explain-
Okay. So put language in here that makes that clear.
Yeah, but the other
Okay.
pieces about like the communication and the the narrative
Okay.
and the inside the disposition, I think is something we can do process wise.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so we've made it through the rules, the draft rules, and I think before moving on, unless any of you have, any of the RAC members or DFR have any other questions, comments, we probably could go ahead and take some time to find out if we have interested parties or folks from the public too that want to comment. But before we go to that, I see some RAC member hands going up. So let's start with Gary.
Thanks. What I'm interested in is with the changes in all these rules, is this going to help expedite reviews of associations that get filed? I know sometimes in the past it's taken some time. And so with this clarification and other things, is this going to help get these reviews done quicker?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure, Rick, that we can get you what you need.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Great, thank you.
And I think, is it Antoinette? Your hand's up.
Yeah, nice. After this, I swear I'll just zip my mouth like I've been talking a lot. Sorry. Well, in our April 1st letter, we did respectfully request the DFR to really capture in that form prescribed by the DFR, which now we know is going to be the transmittal, an attestation requirement for the associations, because it should be a dual responsibility. I think the associations should also be held accountable to the information in the documents that they send us. So it will be very helpful for the DFR to provide some sort of attestation we can give the associations to also sign. We're happy to help with the drafting if necessary.
I remember that request, and there could be a couple ways to approach it. And yeah, getting input would certainly be helpful. I thought perhaps it could be a part of the transmittal. Contact names are listed on it, although the contacts of the insurer, the association, and perhaps there could just be a simple attestation statement that they sign to attest. So we'll discuss that again and try to get some clarity on that. But I don't think there's any disagreement that would not be helpful to the process. So, but I defer to Rick and Tasha on that.
Yeah, kind of, Rick Berry. Kind of a clarifying question. Is the intention then that I guess I can just look at your letter, but that would be essentially a liability waiver of some kind, saying, if anything in here is wrong, that it's on the group, not the carrier, and is that what you're envisioning here? We probably need Neela to weigh in on that too, because I mean, we regulate carriers, so I'm not sure. I'm really uncertain about that piece.
Yeah, and I think we have talked about it internally. We can't require an attestation to be passed off, I don't think, to the group in this case, because our regulatory authority is over the insurer. So we are limited, and really, as a licensed insurer, that's all in the licensing requirements, and that that's who we're going to take action against. So while I understand the concern from the insurer perspective, if incorrect information is given, I don't think that we can transfer any of that responsibility to the group. Really, it is up to the insurer to make sure that the group is providing factual information. Yeah, Antoinette, go ahead. I was just kind of responding to you. Go.
But with this whole filing process of AHP since 2008, the onus has been on the carrier to do it when the carrier does not have any control over the group or govern the association. So I think to look at this as a dual responsibility, accountability, it is fair to at least have a portion of the transmittal that we provide the association to attest to and include it as part of the filing. Although I do understand the DFR has no, I guess how you were saying, jurisdiction over the association itself.
And I understand that there's been like a lot of history of potentially poor communication between the groups and the insurers or producers. There's a lot of missing information just by the way that this process has been structured. So it has really resulted in carriers and groups not having a level playing field on information, I guess. This is, I think, the first time in my memory of having worked at the division that we had representatives from the groups on this call to kind of hear the conversation. I don't know if any of the folks from Ben Chamber or others have any recollection of that. I just can't really peg a time previously. But really, this is where it becomes the responsibility of the insurer in the process of working with the group to make sure that the group understands that, if inaccurate information is submitted, that could result in the loss of coverage for members eventually. And really, that's communication that should be ongoing between the insurer and the group in our mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in contract law or anything, and I know we've got a lot of attorneys on the phone that could school me in this area. But I mean, I think those kinds of understandings are ironed out or should be ironed out in the application process anyway, and are probably carrier specific. What they make a group sign, specifying that they're responsible for what they provide as far as their membership and group documents and the like. But I'm not sure.
Thank you, everybody. That was a good thing to discuss. And we'll have to discuss that with our internal, counsel too. So we should probably, unless there's any other questions or comments, I would like to open it up for opportunity for public comment on the draft rules to interested parties or any other members of the public that may have indicated they'd like to give some testimony. Hand is up. Kenneth Bischow.
Hi, this is Kenneth. I'm the commercial pricing manager at Pacific Source Health Plans. I just wanted to add some commentary around the reference to minimum value calculator. And I support the DFR's objective of wanting to make sure that we don't get like really bottomed out mean plans through these associations going. Like, I don't think anybody wants to race to the bottom. But with respect to the difference between the minimum value and the actuarial value calculators, the minimum value calculator that is referenced hasn't been updated since 2014. It's so old, in fact, that you can't put in a HSA qualified plan, like you can't put in 2023's maximum out of pocket of $7,500. What carriers often end up doing is demonstrating compliance through the use of the AV calculator. Just as you revisit, that rule, I know that there was going to be some discussion on that. I just wanted to throw that out there so that the DFR is aware of how demonstration of that is going to actually end up working. It's probably going to end up being through the AV calculator or through some form of actuarial judgment, just because the minimum value calculator as released by CMS is defunct.
Can I ask a follow-up question? I am not an actuary, Kenneth. I don't pretend to play one on TV, but I do manage a couple of them. So I'm going to be really dangerous for a second. Is there a demonstration that we could get from an actuary, and I don't know what this would look like, once again, not an actuary, that would that we get down to our question, but not rely on old defunct data.
I think what you need is to use the actuarial value calculator, the AV calculator, which is updated annually by CMS, and that we need to demonstrate a 60% on that or higher.
Okay, thank you. And I may have one of my actuaries and Rick reach back out if we have any additional questions on that, just because this is not one of my strong areas. So I will definitely follow up on that and clarify that language where we can, or clarify intent about what's going on there.
Thank you for your comments, Ken. Anybody else?
I'm sorry, can I follow up? This is Rick Berry again, follow up on Ken's comment. Isn't that, I mean, the AV calculator though, I mean, I think that the reason we switched this out originally was that it, you know, essentially referenced ACA law. Does the AV calculator, doesn't it rely on calculations around essential health benefits? I mean, I mean, it's something the AV calculator is what I'm familiar with around the ACA, but I don't know. Sounds like it does work for large group, but I mean, it probably isn't something that should be in the rules, right?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I don't personally work on the small group filings, so I'll have to, I can follow up and email you some additional information from my perspective, Rick. But I do encourage you to actually download the minimum value calculator yourself and try it out. You'll see that it's not going to work for you.
Okay. No, I understood. We just essentially, you know, parroted the federal requirements that apply to large group because that's all we got.
Okay, thank you both. All right, another opportunity. Going on. Okay, so let's talk about next steps. We'd like to try to turn these, if we are going to make any adjustments to the rules, again, turn them around as quickly as possible, resend them out. That can be done even in the interim before the written comments post this RAC are due. We're going to go ahead and give time until May 13th, Friday, for if anyone wants to submit any additional comments. I can't give you a timeline of when we'll make these adjustments, but it'll be my priority to work with our team and make adjustments where we can and get those out for another, hopefully a quick review on all your parts. Because we really, for the rules to be effective August 1st, we need to have a public hearing at the tentative time that we've set of June 22nd, with all the different rulemaking going on. That public hearing will be, we hope, a hybrid. So for those that want to attend in person, I haven't worked all that out because our offices are just reopening to the public on May 1st. But I think we'll try to hopefully have something organized by then. Karen, is there anything you'd like to comment on with that timing?
So if we want to do a public hearing on June 22nd, that means we would need to make a filing at the end of May. And then we could have a 7/1 effective date. Or, so I think if we're shooting for
our goal
July,
was 7/1. Our goal was
I think we can do it.
Additionally, so.
Okay, I'll
was more
double
like-
check.
Okay.
Let me
Right,
double
but as
check.
far as for the RAC activities, Rules Advisory Committee members, definitely want to, where we might be able to make changes. If that happens, we'll send you out an updated draft and ask for a fairly quick turnaround with that. But again, you still have the time to still submit comments by May 13th but I still want to get any kind of an updated draft in front of you sooner than later. There's also the statement of need and fiscal impact document. The draft, I almost have that done, and while we don't have time to talk about it today, I want to send it to you. It's in draft form now with more content for your review and feedback. So that'll be another thing I need feedback. Would welcome that from you by May 13th, and I'll probably be able to send that out. If not today, it'll be probably by tomorrow morning. Otherwise, unless anyone has any questions, we should be able to wrap up a little early. Dave, I see your hand.
I think it definitely qualifies as a request, not a question, but so very much appreciating this, the work that's put into this and kind of your efforts to get this to, where we're going here and to get the rules finalized and made effective. So it's a request, I think, for Tasha and Rick. We talked about that new transmittal, and that's obviously a key part of this process to really get us moving. So as much as we can kind of, or you all can kind of at least sketch out some timelines for that to keep that moving. I think I heard Antoinette mention earlier offering to, to sort of be part of that. And I think you were planning to do that. I'd love to be part of that review and kind of, promise to be swift about it so we can kind of keep that part of the process moving as well. So just wanted to put that request out there.
Thank you, Dave. That
Yeah,
sounds
noted.
good.
And that's our intention as well. I don't see any reason to, once the rules are finalized, to distribute that to the group, but we can talk more about that internally.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, well, thank you again, everyone, for your time and assistance with these rules. And if you have any questions that come up after we end the meeting, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll work internally with our team to get you the information that you need. And I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon, right, or communicate soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.